tell me about the Child Support Performance and Incentive Act. What is that, and how does it impact fathers?
Okay, so this is a act from the federal government, right? And the way that it affects fathers, and my issue with it, and what I've been proposing as an amendment to that act, is there are 5 points of measurement that's established in that act with regards to. Well, before I start there, the Child Support Performance and Incentive Act is basically a program established by the federal government for the states. And there's 5 measurements of performance that if there are certain levels met in those 5 categories, then there are certain amounts of money that each state gets from the federal government. Those 5 measurements are: 1, the state's performance in establishing paternity, establishing child support orders, enforcement or collection of child support, and then the collections of arrears, right? So if the state performs at, depending on what level, they get certain amount of dollar amounts from the federal government. And so my issue with that is, all good. If there's a dollar amount attached to my ability or my performance in establishing child support, then I'm going to be more incentivized, as the system is designed, incentivized to, find the dad, right? I'm going to be more incentivized to put that dad on child support. I'm going to be more incentivized to collect child support, and I'm going to be more incentivized to collect any past arrears. My issue with that is it doesn't provide for modifications. And I think modifications are so important because people have changes in their lives, changes in income, changes in employment, particularly this past year of COVID. There were a lot of people that were laid off, furloughed, unemployed, but they have these past child support orders that they are under. And I know in the state of Texas, modifications in situations like this are not easy to come by. And so, and again, like I said before, a lot of this stuff comes from the federal government and channels down to the state. So if it starts at the federal government level, if they add as a 6th measure modifications, right? And these states are incentivized and they receive money by their performance level in establishing or granting modifications or making them modifications accessible, then I think that's going to solve a lot of the problems that we see with arrears and child support collections and all of that. Changes in people's financial situations happen every day, but it is hard for these people to get changes in their orders, and that just doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, that's one of the challenging things. Like a point here that, despite, say, in the state of Texas where those modifications are challenging, I want to pull my hair out with the number of guys who, hey, keep reaching out to me. I'm here as a resource. This is not me complaining, but the number of guys that reach out to me on Facebook or through different means that are, hey, I lost my job a year ago. What do I do about child support? If you lose your job, if there's a material change in circumstance, you need to go down and immediately file. Now, the state of Texas, a little bit different. In California, if you lose your job and 2 days later in that same month, you go file for a child support modification, all you have to do in the state of California, if DCSS won't do it, you file an FL 300 requesting a modification, and you'll go in front of a judge to have that modified.
You're kidding me. Just want to do the form.
So California, you have 2 options. Number 1 is the first option I always tell guys, like I said, before you're going to retain me, what you're going to do is you're going to call your county's Department of Child Support Services. And you're going to tell them you lost your job and you want a modification. They're going to send you a packet, and you're going to immediately fill that out, and you're going to send it back in immediately. And then upon filling it out, you're going to bug them for the next 2 or 3 days. And are you going to file for a modification? Are you going to file for a modification? They have this nasty little habit of only filing for modification when child support's going to go up. But if they don't move fast enough, if it's going to be another couple months before they move, all you have to do is file a request for order, child support. You're going to submit the financial documents, and you're going to go in front of your judge. And California is just a worksheet. It's just a calculation. There's really minimal discretion. And I know there are other states out there that are like that, but if you wait 6 months and you build up all those arrears in the state of California, if nothing's been filed, we can't go back and adjust that. But if you filed something and it takes 6 months, they can backdate it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't go back and adjust it, and that's not just the state of California. That comes from the Bradley Amendment, again, from the federal government. You cannot modify child support retroactively. So you really have to. But I love the fact that it's just that easy. It's not that easy in Texas. I hear it all the time. Like, fathers will reach out to the Office of Attorney General to say, I've lost my job, and they think that's enough, that they've notified them. But that's not enough. It's then on the Office of Attorney General to initiate a confirmation of child support, a child support review order, a child support review. And that's what it's on them to do that once they've been notified. But a lot of times, most times that doesn't happen. So that really leaves it on the person who's had the change in their financial circumstance to file a suit with the district court. But it's not that easy. If you don't, you really got to know what you're doing. It's not as easy as just filling out a form here.
So sounds like Texas is more like your standard. Most issues in family court are more like standard civil litigation would be in an employment dispute or in a contractual dispute. Yeah. Whereas states like California, it is not at all the same. Like I said, you can get everything you need done with exception of a few things with forms that you just have to put the information into.
But you know what though? So that means that states like Texas, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? We can just see how states like California do it, and we just kind of bring in some of those ways, because the way that you just described that it happens or works in California is absolutely the way that it should work in Texas. A person, because think about it, if you can't afford to pay your child support, you cannot afford to hire a lawyer to file a modification case. You just cannot, right? Yep. But the way that it works in Texas, you've got to have the knowledge to know how to be able to go down to the courthouse, draft up your petition for a modification, file it, know that you got to get that person served, and then know that the court's going to require mediation. All of the things that a non-lawyer would not know, you're required to know unless you have the resources to hire an attorney to do that for you. And I think that's unfair.
Yeah, I think that a lot of attorneys would look at it, and I sat through the American Bar Association Family Law Sections Conference a couple weeks back. Not a word about it, but there's serious issue with access to justice in family law. And it's even worse for fathers. There are a lot more resources for mothers than there are for fathers. So
yeah, that's right. Because a mom can, I hate to make it about mom and dad, but it just ends up happening that way. But a person can here in Texas, call the Office of Attorney General and say, I want child support from this man. And they needn't say anything more. The Office of Attorney General is going to jump to it. Because that's one of the incentives, right? Establishing child support. So they jump to it and they say, we don't represent mom, we don't represent dad, we represent the state. And they jump to it and they get this child support order established, right? But if dad calls the Office of Attorney General and says, I need a modification, I lost my job. Crickets.
The MJ shrug. I don't know what's going on.
That's not fair. It's not fair. It's not right. And what that looks like in reality is this man is on the hook. Just say if he's supposed to be paying $1,000 a month, right? And he's lost his job. He is on the hook for that $1,000 every month. So every month that he doesn't pay $1,000, it's accruing arrears and interest. And now all the collection measures that we talked about previously, all of that is now in play. When all of that could have been remedied by him being able to have a modification readily available to him.
Yeah.
It's just common sense in my mind.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, we get this question weekly, like, why do these things not change? It's because it's easier to continue to do the things the way we've been doing them. Change is difficult. And then we look at if there are bad laws. So Texas has some bad processes and procedures around child support. Mm-hmm. California, I would say, probably has the worst domestic violence law in family court of any state in the country. Mm-hmm. But think about the way your representatives in Congress or in the state house, or it's the state assembly out here in California. Mm-hmm. It's much easier to vote for a very strict DV law publicly than it is to vote for one that's maybe not as tough, but actually accomplishes what you're looking to accomplish. Same with child support. It's going to be easier to vote for a law that we're going to collect more child support, we're going to take care of the kids, for people who don't understand what's going on through the system.
Right.
What's going to be more challenging is standing up and saying the system's broken, we need to make this change, and there's going to be custodial parents who are going to get substantially less child support.
Yeah.
One of the biggest arguments against the 50-50 presumption is that fathers are just going to use that to avoid child support. I hate to break it to them, but there are just as many moms who are trying to leverage the system now, and dads who are custodial parents who are only trying for that 100% custody to get that money. You're going to have those people on the fringes and outskirts, no matter what the rule and what the law is.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I mean, I feel like a lot of the reason why, the arguments against, or why some of these ideals do not, garner the support and traction, is because a lot of it comes from, unfortunately, men, because they're the ones that have been in large numbers adversely affected by these laws and provisions that are currently in place. And then those men get dismissed as being deadbeat dads. Oh, they just don't want to pay, So, there's no real credibility given to the issues that are brought up, because it's just dismissed as deadbeat dads. I love that I am on the side of this that I'm on, because I'm not a deadbeat dad. I am a woman who received child support. I benefited from child support. I understand the importance of child support, but I also, as a family lawyer, have a front row seat to the flaws and the injustices and inequities that exist currently within the law. So my proposal is not, let's get rid of child support, let's get rid of the system altogether. But I am saying that there are obviously and absolutely some modifications and tweaks that are required to make it more equitable and make it more so in aligned with the child's best interest.
Yeah, 100% agree.